A beautiful girl fainted on the spot from shock when a cat appeared, with the door wide open. Moreover, others witnessed the scene. Hayato, standing by, couldn't clear his name even if he jumped into the yellow river. Living with 5 beautiful girls is indeed painful. 3 years later, Hayato returned to his hometown to take over the coffee shop left by his deceased grandmother. After a season of hard work, he finally got the cafe on the right track. The waitresses were all beautiful, and each had a crush on Hayato, leading to jealousy among them. That evening, a meeting was called due to unresolved issues. Uka immediately confronted Shiragiku and Akane about their feelings for Hayato and reminded them not to cling to him at work. She also questioned Reho, who reluctantly agreed. However, Shiragiku and Akane denied having feelings for Hayato, claiming their interactions were purely professional. Seeing their denial, and to prevent the beloved shop from closing, Uka revealed her feelings for Hayato, adopting a tsundere attitude and stating her annoyance at others flirting with him. Akane saw through this, provoking Uka by questioning how close they were. Uka inadvertently mentioned their intimate relationship and exaggerated the size of Hayato's fertility organs, shocking everyone. Ami, naively envious, expressed her desire for Hayato, which Shiragiku quickly warned her not to mention outside. Akane continued teasing Uka, who got caught up in fantasizing. Reho, unable to watch silently, scolded Uka for running ahead, revealing she also had feelings for Hayato, but hadn't managed to consume his fertility organs yet. Akane comforted Reho, suggesting Uka was probably lying, just to make it appear that she wasn't the only one not being honest. Since Reho had spoken openly, Akane no longer hid her feelings, admitting she liked Hayato and had told him so. However, she wasn't rushing him for an answer due to the busy shop. Shiragiku also confessed, matching Akane's situation. Reho had confessed without response, so all 5 present loved Hayato. Only Uka hadn't confessed yet, but the tsundere would not admit it. Before she could finish, Hayato entered. Ami eagerly asked if his adult version fertility organs were indeed large. Hayato became serious and demanded to know who taught Ami such vulgar jokes. Everyone quickly blamed Uka, who was then duly punished. The next day, Ami went to play games with Hayato. While kneeling and fiddling with the console, her buttocks stuck out conspicuously. Hayato, searching for game cartridges, was startled to find a pile of animal heads in the cabinet. They then played Street Fighter II, where Hayato was no match for Ami and was thoroughly defeated, even achieving a streak of 50 losses. Frustrated, Hayato stormed out to cool off. Meanwhile, Uka was seriously contemplating her feelings. Her sister had exposed her hidden emotions, but she refused to admit them. After returning to the shop and hearing from Ami that no one else had returned, she stripped down and went to the bathroom to shower. Unexpectedly, she encountered Hayato there, also bathing. They faced each other naked, quickly turned around, but it was too late as they had seen everything. Embarrassed, Uka hurried out. The day's events left her distracted, constantly thinking about Hayato's fertility organs until Ami called her for dinner, asking why her face was so red. This forced Uka to confront her feelings. Was she just anxious because other girls had made advances towards Hayato? Did she like him as well? Before she could find an answer, she bumped into Hayato in the corridor. Walking past him angrily, she slipped on a banana peel Ami had left on the floor, falling backwards. Hayato rushed to help, resulting in both of them falling into an awkward position with Uka on top of Hayato, their eyes locked. Suddenly, a heavy object fell near them, almost causing their lips to meet. Hayato turned his head away shyly. Seeing his reaction, Uka found him adorable and wanted to tease him more before she was interrupted by the others arriving. Uka quickly got up to explain. At that moment, Akane and Ami noticed a shadow flitting by. But when Hayato opened the door to check, there was nothing inside. Their house seemed to be haunted. Most people didn't take the incident seriously, thinking Akane and Ami were just seeing things. However, that evening, Akane quietly went to Hayato's room, claiming she could hardly hold back and needed his help just for the night. Hayato was scared, fearing for his virtue, but it turned out Akane was just too frightened to go to the bathroom alone. The other girls were too sleepy to accompany her, so she had to ask Hayato for help. Reluctantly, Hayato agreed to take Akane to the bathroom and promised to wait outside the door. Once Akane was inside, he started singing a creepy nursery rhyme, scaring Akane so much she rushed out without pulling up her underwear, ready to poke Hayato's eyes out. Just then, a noise came from the next room. Hayato pushed the door open and entered, with Akane, scared to be alone, following him. They ended up at the door of their deceased grandmother's room. Upon opening the door, they were greeted with two bright lights. Akane fainted from fright, exposing part of her chest. Hearing the commotion, the others hurried over. Hayato found himself unable to explain the situation, quickly labeled as a pervert. However, it turned out that a small cat had been causing the scares. The girls were charmed by the kitten. Akane, previously terrified, now wanted to keep the cat, and the others agreed, except Reho, who was scared because the cat could stretch incredibly long. Ultimately, they voted, and the majority decided to make the cat a member of their cafe, even naming it after their grandmother. This cat particularly liked Hayato. Reho and Shiragiku were discussing their grandmothers when Shiragiku remembered something. They had mentioned their grandmother's surnames, and Hayato's grandmother had started crying. Why would she react that way? A photo Hayato found might provide the answer. It showed 6 maidens, looking very similar to the girls currently living with Hayato. The surnames on the back matched those of the girls' grandmothers, including Hayato's. It seemed everything was destined. Hayato's cafe is facing a major crisis because Mr. Fuwa is causing trouble again. He has recruited a bunch of imposters of Uka and opened a counterfeit Familia cafe. Meanwhile, Hayato is unaware of this and is on his way to meet Uka's father. The visit stems from Uka's last conversation at home with her sister about her feelings for Hayato. While they were talking, their father entered and insisted on knowing what they were discussing. The sister mentioned that Hayato is greatly admired by the staff, and 3 out of 5 employees like him. Misunderstanding that Uka was also involved, the father decided to have Uka bring Hayato home to meet him. After hearing Uka's explanation, Hayato thought her father was just concerned about her future at the cafe, and unsure about entrusting his daughter to a 19-year-old young man. Uka is indispensable to the cafe, leaving Hayato no choice but to bravely face her father's scrutiny. However, it was clear that they were not on the same page. Going back a bit, Uka's father had burst into the bathroom while the younger daughter Kitsuka was bathing, asking her about the nature of Hayato and Uka's relationship. Kitsuka told him they were dating, so the father initially asked Hayato how long he and Uka had been together. Hayato, thinking the question referred to how long they had known each other, answered 7 months. This led to a conversation where they were talking at cross purposes. Hayato, determined to keep Uka at the cafe, almost gave a perfect son-in-law response. Uka's father was very satisfied with his answers, even thinking they were considering marriage. Uka, on the same wavelength as Hayato, supported him. Seeing his daughter care so much about this man, the father tearfully agreed. Meanwhile, Kitsuka, who had been eavesdropping, remained hidden. When the grandmother returned, Kitsuka informed her that the manager of the cafe where her sister worked had come. Uka's father continued to test Hayato, asking what he would do if the cafe struggled. Hayato stated he would graduate from his paused university studies and seek corporate employment. It's important to note that Hayato is a student of the prestigious University of Tokyo and had dropped out because he was determined not to let his grandmother's cafe close. His determination was evident in his expression and eyes. Importantly, Hayato, an orphan with both a car and a house, was seen as an ideal son-in-law candidate. Uka's father was moved to tears, feeling Hayato's resolve, and decided to entrust his daughter to him. Just then, Uka's grandmother appeared and was shocked to see Hayato, remarking on his striking resemblance to a man she knew. Tears streaming down her face, she apologized to Hayato for not keeping a promise, mistaking him for her grandfather. Hayato clarified that he was the man's grandson. Uka's grandmother then showed them old photos from the cafe, confirming Hayato's resemblance to the man in the pictures, who was indeed Hayato's grandfather and the original owner of the cafe where she once worked. She was eager to know who Mr. Taiyo had married. Hayato revealed it was his grandmother, her former colleague, which brought her both joy and relief. However, learning that both had passed away made her saddened. Hayato comforted her, explaining that his grandmother had been well cared for by Uka's family and had passed away peacefully and happily. Curious about the unkept promise Uka's grandmother mentioned, he learned it related to her leaving her job with a promise to return, which she never fulfilled. Afterwards, Uka's family saw Hayato and Uka off. It was almost certain that the maid in the old photo they had found was Uka's grandmother. Decades later, their grandchildren had reunited in the same cafe, hardly a coincidence. Yet Hayato chose not to delve further, believing that if this reunion held any significance, it would reveal itself in time. When Mr. Fuwa drove up, he became irritated upon seeing Hayato, who increasingly resembled his grandfather. Hayato excitedly asked if he knew about his grandfather, but Mr. Fuwa refused to continue the conversation, blew smoke in Hayato's face, and drove away. When Hayato and Uka returned to their cafe, their 4 colleagues quickly surrounded them, warning of bad news. It turned out Mr. Fuwa had returned and left a poster of another cafe with an address on it. They went to the address and found a newly renovated cafe that was a complete replica of their own, from the name to the decor. Hayato was initially confident their original cafe could not lose to a copycat. However, when 5 beautiful girls, styled to mimic them, emerged from the cafe, Hayato truly felt the situation was dire. That evening, Hayato and Uka showed the old photo to the others and asked why they had come to the cafe. Shiragiku wanted to work in her father's mentor's cafe. Akane was looking for a part-time job while visiting the sea, and Reho wanted to work in a city where no one knew her, with Ami having similar reasons. They all had gathered according to their own wishes, but Uka realized their gathering's purpose was to save their cafe from crisis. The new cafe posed a real threat, especially since its staff, though imitations, were all very attractive. However, the quality of the food and coffee was most critical. Hayato suggested they scout the copycat cafe, so the next day they visited it in disguise. The menu was indeed rich. The fake Uka served them first. Hayato suggested they wait before ordering, which immediately angered the imposter, mimicking Uka's personality perfectly. Then came the fake Ami, who started telling boring jokes, indifferent to the customers' reactions, very much in Ami's style, awkwardly silencing everyone present. The third impersonator was Akane's, who was very good at enticing customers. The fourth was clearly imitating Shiragiku. Seeing her own impersonator act foolishly made Shiragiku break out in sweat. Reho quickly comforted her, pointing out that our Shiragiku was not that silly. The last one was Reho's impersonator, who turned out to be reliable like Reho and even a superstar child genius currently popular on TV and online. After experiencing the copycat cafe, everyone was disheartened on the way back. It was clear to all that this cafe would definitely be popular. The maid costumes they wore were different from those Uka made, with very high-quality fabric. The coffee was made from high-quality beans and the food was exceptionally delicious, appealing to both adults and children. Hayato thought everyone was losing spirit and he knew they couldn't compete, especially since the other cafe was 3 times their size and even had a parking lot, attracting customers from afar. They could also get cheaper ingredients through Mr. Fuwa's connections, leaving them at a disadvantage in a price war. Hayato felt a sense of despair, realizing his grandmother might have appeased Mr. Fuwa to protect the cafe and him. However, Uka and the others were rallying. Uka planned to design even cuter Halloween costumes. Akane criticized the barista skills. Shiragiku aimed to win with food quality, and Reho boldly declared, "Do you know how many tough situations I've been through? Witness the power of a veteran?" Ami promised to make the customers happier. Seeing everyone so determined, Hayato, as the manager, couldn't back down. He decided to protect the cafe in his own way. Hayato's shop is struggling, while the pirate store is packed every day, yet everyone is trying hard. Uka designed a Halloween-themed costume, and Shiragiku has been experimenting with new menu items in the kitchen, though it's not going smoothly. The original menu was perfect, designed by her grandmother, a 3-star chef. Shiragiku feels she can't surpass it. Others comfort her not to rush. Only Hayato senses something is wrong. He thinks Shiragiku isn't really trying, but is trapped in a framework, her dishes lacking her own personality. Out of respect, she is reluctant to change her grandmother's menu. However, times have changed, and her grandmother's menu alone can't compete with the pirate store. Originally, her grandmother opened the shop simply to attract some customers, make money, and spend time with her grandson, without any grand ambitions. Now the restaurant needs a unique menu to fill the seats. Hayato believes Shiragiku has the ability, but is holding herself back. He decisively claims the shop as his own and plans to remodel it his way. If Shiragiku stays to support him, she should show her true skill. This finally reminds Shiragiku of her original purpose for staying. Overhearing this, others step out and encourage Shiragiku to cook what she loves without worry. Inspired, Shiragiku finally breaks free from her constraints. Since her grandmother retired, her cooking has improved. Now she can help Hayato with her latest dishes. Seeing everyone's efforts, Reho wonders what she can do for Hayato and visits the market the next day. There, she encounters Chiyoda from the rival store, who mocks her for only buying cabbage. Reho, ignoring her, vows to show her seniority, not just as a cafe worker, but also as a former child prodigy in showbiz. Chiyoda is intimidated by her gaze. Meanwhile, Shiragiku serves many new delicious dishes. First, this open-faced sandwich is a common snack in Spain. Thanks to Akane's help, Shiragiku was able to make so many. Akane modestly says she only assisted, as she couldn't make it herself. It's an exquisite dish made with squid ink bread, pig's trotters, and foie gras. Shiragiku named it Spring, inspired by the cherry blossom season when the shop reopened. She plans to feature it as the cafe's highlight. Hayato happily agrees, thinking the dish fits well. Ami is curious about the beautiful crispy topping, and Shiragiku tells her it's almond tuile. Although the new menu is nearly complete, Hayato still worries about the cost of ingredients. Just as he mentions this, Reho returns with the suppliers, who've agreed to sell their products at very low prices due to her negotiating. This showcases the talents of the former child prodigy, Reho. Meanwhile, although the pirate cafe is crowded, Chiyoda uses breaks to livestream and attract fans. As soon as the stream ends, her demeanor changes. Their contract with Mr. Fiwa is to bankrupt Hayato's cafe or be stuck working there indefinitely. Chiyoda does not want to remain a maid forever. She aims to use this project to become famous and sign with a bigger agency. She doesn't want to end up like Reho, who lost her former glory and now works at a cafe. However, Chiyoda hadn't expected that Reho would use her childhood star fame to revive the cafe, drawing all the customers there after a news story about the downtrodden prodigy reviving her grandmother's shop touched their hearts. Although the promotional video seemed a bit pitiful, the dishes and new uniforms looked attractive, and Rio's smiling face was crucial to the cafe's sudden popularity. The cafe was so busy that TV stations came to interview them. Hayato felt guilty about Reho being in the spotlight again, to which Reho responded that if he felt sorry, she wouldn't mind being his girlfriend. Wait, you've mentioned the good part. What about the bad? 3 weeks later, Hayato's cafe continued to be very busy, with the new menu and uniforms well received, mainly because of Rio's presence. They decided to give Reho a few days off, as the cafe could hardly manage without it. At that time, Reho was at home watching Chiyoda's livestream, where Chiyoda was pleading with viewers to visit their cafe, warning that otherwise, it might close down. After the livestream ended, Chiyoda's colleagues returned with food bought from Hayato's cafe, infuriating Chiyoda. She questioned why they supported the rivalry by increasing their turnover, but they genuinely wanted to try the food. Honestly, the other girls were also losing interest in their current work. Their cafe was heavily criticized online for blindly copying others, a strategy that was unsustainable. They wanted to discuss with their boss about serving customers in their own way. Chiyoda had suggested this before, but Mr. Fuwa insisted they continue to imitate others. Chiyoda was not ready to give up. She didn't want to lose to Reho, the pitied child star. She feared becoming like Reho, ultimately defeated by her. Then, as if on cue, Reho appeared in their cafe, lecturing Chiyoda in a senior's tone, saying she underestimated the entertainment industry. Thinking working in a restaurant would bring many fans was a daydream. Reho criticized her as being nothing more than her looks, deluded by online flattery. Chiyoda retorted that she might be struggling now, but she would improve. Reho scornfully replied that there were many more girls cuter and more talented than her. Chiyoda shouldn't expect fans to stay. Reho spoke harshly, and Chiyoda's colleagues couldn't stand it. They defended how hard Chiyoda worked, but Reho sharply told them this world doesn't just reward effort, and suggested Chiyoda give up sooner as her fans would leave anyway. This brought Chiyoda to tears. Chiyoda began crying, listing her fans by name who had promised lifelong support. Just then, Reho realized the livestream was still on, and the comments were all criticizing her. Reho stormed off after harshly speaking to Chiyoda, who quickly checked the comments. Surprisingly, most negative comments were directed at Reho, while Chiyoda received many positive ones. Her fans reassured their continued support. Thus, Reho's actions inadvertently improved Chiyoda's reputation. Some colleagues speculated that Reho had intentionally come to help Chiyoda. Hayato, realizing this, didn't blame Reho. He even consoled her, saying a decrease in customer flow was good, as they were too busy. He then praised Reho, calling her a genius child star, though her act was a bit overdone. Touched by Hayato's kindness and recalling how he had always supported her, Reho felt even more inspired not to let him down. Chiyoda and her team are in big trouble. Although accidentally leaving the livestream on didn't harm Chiyoda's reputation and even garnered sympathy, she revealed that Mr. Fuwa had instructed them to sabotage the rival cafe. As a result, the fake cafe's business continued to suffer, attracting negative reviews. Mr. Fuwa furiously scolded Chiyoda, giving her 3 days to pack up and leave, as she was responsible for the mess. Furthermore, she and her team were tasked with covering the demolition costs. Alone and troubled, Chiyoda sat by the river where she unexpectedly encountered Reho. Meanwhile, Chiyoda's colleagues visited Hayato's cafe and shared their predicament about the eviction and debt they were facing. This moved Shiragaku and the others to suggest seeking Hayato's help. Chiyoda faced the worst situation, having been abandoned even by her agency. Reho, unsurprised by the outcome, offered her help as a senior in the industry, quickly winning Chiyoda's trust. When Hayato returned to his cafe, he was greeted by a group of beautiful girls changing clothes. The room fell silent, and as Hayato stared in bewilderment, Uka hit him with a slipper. It turned out that Reho had arranged for Chiyoda and the others to temporarily stay at the cafe. While explaining the house rules, Ami rushed in with coffee, tripped over the threshold, and was kicked by another girl, causing a chaotic scene where coffee spilled on everyone. Thus, everyone had to change clothes. Hayato was speechless, thinking, "This is all in Japanese, why can't I understand it?" Blaming the duo's foolishness, he wondered why employees from a rival cafe were in his cafe. After a moment of thought, Reho gave up trying to figure it out. Essentially, a group of cute girls were trying to get by with their charm, indicating that they'd be staying there temporarily. After changing clothes, everyone introduced themselves. Besides the well-known Chiyoda, there was Takasaki, a model with long blue hair, Momi, a college junior skilled in cooking, Biryu, a freelancer who wears glasses, and Tina, who shared Ami's foolishness and was currently traveling. Luckily, Hayato's house had plenty of empty rooms to accommodate everyone, although he did not plan to host them long-term and urged them to find their own place soon. The other girls were quite welcoming, and everyone quickly got along before pairing up and leaving the room. Lastly, Reho took Chiyoda with her. Before leaving, Reho reminded Hayato to be kinder to the struggling girls, although just offering shelter was already quite generous. However, problems arose as the house became too noisy with many girls discussing various topics, overwhelming Hayato. In the evening, two foolish ones started a pillow fight. Hayato wanted to use the bathroom, but Momi was engrossed in a comic, and Biryu treated him like a confidant, seeking advice for her troubles. The bathroom was a mess, and when it was Hayato's turn to bathe, there was no hot water left. After his bath, he encountered Shiragiku, who drunkenly tried to seduce him while Takasaki egged her on and joined in by lifting her shirt. Hayato was tormented, and the situation only worsened when Uka stepped on his face. After just one night, poor Hayato felt drained and decided to help resolve their debts quickly to expedite their departure. Meanwhile, Akane and Reho felt threatened by the new, cute girls, especially Chiyoda. When they went to confide in Takasaki, she, swinging 2 balls, boldly claimed she would seduce Hayato. This infuriated both Reho and Akane. Then, Shiragaku entered, drawing attention to her ample chest, which only increased their annoyance. Meanwhile, Uka watched with her chin propped on her hands as the 2 fools, Ami and another, acted out their antics. Ami even bit into a tomato she held in her mouth, pretending it was blood, and was scolded harshly by Uka. When dinner time came, everyone chatted loudly about various topics. Chiyoda wanted to discuss something she had mentioned in the morning with Hayato, who told her to come to his room after dinner. Her face lit up with anticipation. Hearing this, Reho and Akane, the 2 stalkers, quietly approached Hayato's door, only to find Takasaki had also arrived. The 3 eavesdropped on the conversation inside. Chiyoda was expressing her determination to do whatever it took to prove her seriousness to Hayato, despite feeling a bit shy. Takasaki, stirring the pot, suggested she was probably showing off her attributes. The conversation inside grew increasingly suspicious, with Chiyoda mentioning she was willing to do anything and it was her first time. Unable to bear it any longer, Akane and Reho burst through the door, only to find the two were looking at a business proposal. They were merely discussing how to manage a copycat cafe, which still belonged to old man Fuwa, and this issue needed resolution. As Hayato finished explaining, Shiragiku, clad only in her underwear, suddenly jumped on him, and Takasaki quickly began stripping, causing chaos. Eventually, everyone was exhausted and went to sleep. Chiyoda left the room alone, a meaningful smile on her face. The next day, Chiyoda negotiated with Fuwa, who agreed to sell for 6,500,000 yen. Surprisingly, Chiyoda smiled, assuring there was no need to worry about the money as she planned to have Hayato cover the full amount. They had been cozying up to Hayato, softening him up to willingly take on their debts. Hayato himself had mentioned he could lend about 6 million yen. Chiyoda's act of seeming betrayal was actually a strategic move, even considering taking over Hayato's business and defaulting on the loan. The more Fuwa listened, the more excited he became, realizing he had been outsmarted. Chiyoda's actions had been a performance, prearranged with Hayato to lower Fuwa's guard and willingly sell the shop to them. As soon as they returned, Chiyoda immediately wrote an IOU to Hayato, making him the creditor to these 5 beautiful girls. Intent on building the shop they desired, they were now committed to working off their debt. Chiyoda's shop finally started its trial operation. Hayato's savings were also running low, which made him worry. Seeing the carefree Ami only made him envious. On the grand opening day, everyone went to support the event. This time, Chiyoda's team did not mimic the maid style of Hayato's shop, but maintained their own style. Their shop was not a restaurant but a set meal shop, selling only set meals to avoid competing directly with Hayato's restaurant. Moreover, Momi was better at preparing Japanese cuisine. Shiragiku tried the food and praised it highly, revealing that Momi was from a family renowned for cooking. The only issue was that Momi seemed like a different person when wearing a chef's hat. Seeing the shop open smoothly reassured Hayato and the others. Before leaving, Chiyoda discreetly pulled Reho aside and gave her a double coupon for a hot spring inn, claiming she won it in a lottery, but was too busy to use it. To repay her senior, she let Reho take her beloved Hayato on a hot spring trip, as it was obvious to everyone that Reho liked Hayato. Chiyoda even advised Reho to seize what she wanted with all her might, or someone else would take it. After returning to the shop, everyone else left for prior engagements, leaving only Hayato and Reho. Reho took this opportunity to courageously invite Hayato, imagining various scenarios at the hot spring inn with him, and openly mentioning that Chiyoda said to go with the person you like. This clearly indicated her feelings for Hayato, catching him off guard. He became more flustered as Reho approached, and despite his incoherent refusal, it seemed too selfish to enjoy the trip just with each other. Yet Reho persisted, literally leaning on Hayato's shoulder. Just as Hayato was about to give in, Uka and Ami returned, announcing they also won a hot spring trip. Soon after, Shiragiku and Akane returned with yet another pair of tickets, and now they could all go together. Rio's stealthy plan failed on the spot. However, the next day, they all went to the hot spring inn together, with Hayato covering everyone's transportation costs as a sort of staff outing. For some reason, Ami is unusually quiet today and keeps wearing her really ugly glasses. After arriving, they were surprised by the luxurious hotel. But there was a problem. The 3 double tickets meant 3 rooms, requiring them to pair up. Everyone wondered who would share a room with Hayato. Everyone wanted to, especially on a dark, windy night alone with Hayato. Anything could happen. They couldn't decide, so Uka suggested drawing lots. Ami, the least concerned, was chosen, which somewhat reassured the others. After freshening up in their rooms, the girls couldn't wait to go to the open-air hot spring next to the men's bath. They even heard some men joking about Hayato being huge, calling him a lucky direction roll. Reho and her friends imagined some adult scenarios, even thinking of poses. Uka, the only sensible one, told them to stop making crude jokes and suggested Ami take off her ugly glasses. Besides the open-air bath, there was a family bath available for private use, and Reho, Shiragiku, and Akane immediately thought of sneaking away to book it with Hayato. Meanwhile, Hayato had finished bathing and returned to his room, wanting to check on his cat. Ami came back, still wearing those glasses. Hayato asked if there was someone she didn't want to see since she had been down since learning the trip's destination. and had kept her glasses on to hide her true self. He knew she was from the Northeast. Was this her hometown? Ami denied everything and ran out in another outfit, but the staff still recognized her by her silhouette. During the luxurious dinner, Reho brought up booking the family bath. Hayato would have to go, but he wouldn't want to be with more than 2 girls at once, so they agreed to take turns, 10 minutes each, to force their love on him. They discussed how far to take things with Hayato, the lucky direction role, who would definitely need more than 10 minutes. Uka silently listened to their vulgar talk, while Shiragiku suggested they all go in together, saying, "We're family after all, we should share the lucky role." But had anyone considered Hayato's feelings? Hayato slammed the table in frustration and looked at the quiet Ami. Just then, a woman approached, likely looking for Ami. She started by saying her grandmother also wanted to see Ami. Ami took off her glasses and asked if her grandmother was better. The woman hesitated, and Ami realized she was being lied to, called her sister a liar, and ran out. Ami had been orphaned since childhood and depended on her grandmother for support. Her grandmother later started a family home, taking care of children with various needs. This older sister was cared for by her during her student days and has been helping out since graduating. However, her grandmother, now elderly, has developed Alzheimer's. When Ami visited in March, her grandmother did not recognize her and even asked which child she was. This deeply hurt Ami, and she never returned. Hayato, reminded of his past self, felt a deep connection with Ami, perhaps even recognizing that she was suffering more. After his bath that evening, Hayato returned to his room. Ami was already asleep, so he turned off the light and got into bed. Unexpectedly, Ami came over in the middle of the night, asking if she could sleep with him. Moved by her vulnerability, Hayato agreed. They lay back to back, under the same blanket. Hayato shared what he had heard from her sister. Their grandmother's condition had deteriorated to the point where she could no longer care for children, and living alone was too risky, so she was moved to a nursing home. Ami felt both pain and distress, pinning her hopes on a future cure for Alzheimer's to restore her grandmother's memory. She vowed not to return until then. Hayato did not advise her but expressed his regret for not seeing his grandmother before she passed away. That night, Hayato dreamed of his grandfather teaching Ami's grandmother. The next day, Ami reverted to her usual self and decided it was time to visit her grandmother. After sharing a bed with Hayato, Ami finally decided to visit her mother-in-law and make her laugh to remind her of their bond. Everyone supported her, and Hayato's sister helped schedule the meeting at the nursing home, with plans for everyone to accompany Ami. The nursing home was surprisingly luxurious. Ami kept changing her outfits, but this made it harder for her mother-in-law to recognize her, and even startled an old man. When the sister and a nurse brought the mother-in-law over, Ami tried to act serious but quickly broke character by putting on fake mustache glasses for her mother-in-law, who showed no reaction no matter what Ami did. Frustrated, Ami shook her mother-in-law's shoulders, causing her to push Ami away in annoyance. This left Ami very upset, especially remembering her grandmother's past kindness, and she burst into tears. Uka rushed to comfort her. At that moment, Hayato remembered a dream about his young grandmother asking for his help. He approached the grandmother in the demeanor of his dream grandfather, called her by her old name, and asked what she was doing, which miraculously jogged her memory. Hayato shouted, accusing her of forgetting her granddaughter, which led her to apologize and call him captain, recalling memories of her youth in a cafe with Hayato's grandfather. She cried and held Hayato's hand, saying, "I've missed you." When she temporarily regained her senses, Hayato clarified that he was not his grandfather but his grandson, now running the cafe they once owned. The grandmother recognized Ami, who cried even harder. Seeing her grandmother's lucid moment, Ami hugged her and shared a frightening dream she had had. The grandmother comforted her granddaughter, and everyone was amazed, especially since the doctors had said improvement was impossible. Just as the nurse went to call the doctor, Ami hugged her grandmother tightly, which surprised her sister, who had a tough past and once buried Ami in the backyard, leaving only her head exposed. Their grandmother had to correct her sister's harsh words, warning her about her future prospects, which brought the sister to tears. However, the mood quickly turned joyful again. Hayato shared his dream with Uka and the others, explaining that Ami wouldn't want to leave her grandmother now. They didn't plan to return immediately, but decided to stay at a nearby inn for another night, which excited the girls. However, the inn Hayato chose turned out to be a dilapidated haunted house with eerie figures visible in the windows and required them to squeeze into one room. They were greeted by an old woman, ghost-like, who suddenly appeared behind them, telling them dinner was at 6 and they could now go to the hot springs. Surprisingly, she was holding a kitchen knife, looking as if she was about to commit a gruesome act. Akane, terrified, trembled, and wanted to leave immediately, but changed her mind when the old woman mentioned the hot springs were mixed. The 4 girls eagerly stripped and jumped into the hot spring, but Hayato, cautious of impropriety, refused to join. However, Reho and Shiragiku decided to go find him, and Akane planned to do the same, leaving only Uka concerned about Ami, who was probably enjoying her meal by now, making them all hungry. Yet, they were more excited about eating Hayato's sushi roll. Shiragiku's anticipation made Reho and Akane think of risque things, though that wasn't her intention. It turned out they were the only guests. Looking at the dilapidated living room, Akane wanted to leave, but the old woman appeared again, silently, asking how they found the dinner. The wild boar hot pot they had was surprisingly fresh and devoid of any gamey taste, which they all liked. Then, the old woman offered them another local delicacy, boiled locusts. Uka, examining one closely, was so scared she could have died. Shiragiku, on the other hand, enjoyed it and expressed a desire to try another kind of game, Hayato's sushi roll. It turned out the hot pot had alcohol in it, which made Shiragiku rowdy, indiscriminately harassing everyone, including Reho and Akane, complaining they weren't plump enough, and deciding Hayato's sushi roll was better. Reho, disheartened, didn't try to stop Shiragiku's antics. Just then, Chiyoda messaged her asking about the trip, and Reho sent a photo that looked rather lewd. Takasaki, seeing it, got excited and joined Chiyoda in a moment of flirtation. After dinner, Hayato finally went to the hot springs, feeling emotionally and physically exhausted from the trip, only to be surprised by a naked woman in the springs. It was Ami who didn't mind being seen and joined him, revealing that the old woman's diagnosis was a mistake, and she just needed surgery to recover. Ami was thankful to Hayato for his words, which gave her the courage to visit her mother-in-law and discover the misdiagnosis, potentially saving her from dying unrecognized. Ami wanted to thank Hayato, but couldn't think of anything that would make him happy. So she decided to let him touch her, jokingly questioning if this was more a reward for herself than a thank you. Hayato initially wanted to refuse, but seeing Ami a bit sad, went ahead with it, albeit reluctantly. Hayato was woken up by a girl in the middle of the night. She immediately said she couldn't hold it much longer. Just as Hayato was getting excited, Akane added, "Come with me to the bathroom." Hayato immediately lay back down. Since the rundown inn had only one room left, Hayato and his friends slept in a large communal sleeping area. The sleeping positions were decided after the girls argued about it. After massaging Ami's chest in the hot spring, Hayato went straight to the farthest spot inside upon entering. The spot next to him needed careful consideration. Ryo and Akane started arguing immediately, finally settling it with rock, paper, scissors. Unexpectedly, Uka intervened and won against both, then lay down next to Hayato. However, in the middle of the night, Akane woke him up. Too tired, he initially didn't want to accompany her to the bathroom. So, Akane decided to resolve it on the spot, and Hayato ended up going with her anyway, accidentally stepping on Uka. While waiting outside the toilet for Akane, she heard a strange noise inside. Hayato said he hadn't done anything, which frightened Akane into running out and jumping into his arms. Hayato looked inside and saw it was just a locust. Akane then got up from his embrace, fully exposed as she hadn't pulled up her underwear properly. Seeing Hayato blush, Akane, feeling triumphant, deliberately turned to face him, indicating he could if he wanted. Then she took off her yukata, giving him a look. Just as Hayato was at a loss, he accidentally broke through the old wooden wall, finally able to go back to sleep. It was now Shiragiku's turn. She had a question for Hayato and wanted to talk in private. Unable to refuse a beautiful girl, Hayato stepped on Uka again and went to the hallway with Shiragiku. She immediately asked him which one he liked, then untied her yukata, asking if he preferred the left or right side. and started massaging herself right in front of him. Clearly, she was still drunk. Hayato just wished for a pair of eyes that hadn't seen this scene, then broke through the wooden wall again. After returning, he put a note on his face. "Wake me up and I'll kill you." Still, Reho woke him up, questioning why he could spend time with Akane and Shiragiku but not with her. Poor Uka got stepped on for the third time, and this time Hayato skipped all procedures and just ran into the wall in the hallway. The next morning, Uka, the only one who slept through the night, rubbed her sore buttocks, puzzled by the pain. As the four girls woke up, Hayato was still sound asleep, exhausted from being tempted by beauties all night. To avoid troubling the inn staff, Uka tried to wake him, but he wouldn't budge. At that moment, Uka saw something terrifying and fainted. After being revived by the others, she exclaimed that there was a huge hairy caterpillar under Hayato. The girls hurriedly looked and found Hayato's futomaki accidentally exposed. They fixated on the caterpillar, debating whether to help Hayato cover it up. They were reluctant to look away, finding the exaggeration of calling it a futomaki amusing. It was more like the size of a faucet head. Shocked by their bold comments, Uka couldn't believe they even considered taking photos to show others. She quickly intervened. Shiragiku commented on how adorable it was, increasing her affection as Hayato was their beloved. Uka, feeling left out, silently walked away. Meanwhile, Hayato turned over, exposing something else, which the girls described using various Odin ingredients, sparking Uka's curiosity. Shiragiku, overtaken by her feelings, wanted to get a closer look and even considered touching it, claiming it was for culinary research. Blocked by the others, an argument ensued, and Uka ended up falling face first towards Hayato's faucet, recoiling in shock. Just then, Ami returned. To protect the innocent Ami, the girls quickly covered the disheveled Hayato and asked her to leave, only piquing her curiosity further. Unfazed by the sight, Ami recalled her high school brother often appeared similarly at home. Hearing about Hayato's deep sleep, Ami decided to use the iron claw technique, which immediately woke him. Hayato reacted with a monkey steals peach move, astonishing the others with the length he could stretch. His screams filled the room. Their trip ended, and they boarded the return bullet train, leaving Hayato with only painful memories. After returning home, Chiyoda and the others also came over. Everyone was curious about how their relationship with Hayato had developed, especially Reho. After all, a young male university student and 5 uniquely charming girls going on a hot spring trip together, how could nothing exciting happen? Just as Reho was about to explain, Ami burst in saying that Hayato's futomaki exposure was really funny. Takasaki immediately got excited and asked what happened. Uka had to step in to explain, as she was the closest and saw everything clearly. This annoyed Shiragiku, who wasn't even allowed to smell it by Uka. Takasaki, excited, used foul language paired with gestures, making Uka cringe. Then Reho asked her most pressing question about whether Hayato was considered big or not. Unfortunately, Uka had stopped them from taking photos at the time, but everyone had seen what it looked like. Shiragiku said it was about the size of their bathroom faucet. However, Akane had just checked the faucet and felt there were subtle differences. For specifics, they still needed to ask Uka, who didn't want to recall that scene. Unexpectedly, Ami placed a mushroom on the table, asking if it was about that size, which led Uka to tell her to cool off elsewhere. The most experienced, Takasaki, picked up the mushroom and commented that if it's usually like that, then it definitely counts as big. It seems Hayato is indeed gifted. Hayato, unaware of their discussion about the length of his futomaki, was busy delivering local products to the shopping street. Meanwhile, Takasaki and the others were swinging around king oyster mushrooms. Chiyoda was very dissatisfied with Senior Reho. Even if 6 people traveled together, they should find chances to be alone. They stayed in the same room but didn't sneak under the covers. If it were a mixed bath, they could have entered proudly. Yet Reho did nothing. Instead, Ami cheerfully said she slept in the same bed and bathed with Hayato. It turns out, he was the biggest winner. Ami even massaged Hayato's chest. Hearing this, Reho and the others immediately surrounded Ami, demanding to know what happened and why they were completely unaware. Just then, Hayato returned, only to be greeted by Tina, who informed him that Chiyoda and the others had been discussing his futomaki exposure. Hayato rushed into the room, only to once again stumble upon the girls changing clothes together. As for why they were changing together, it was due to the blunders of Ami and Tina, just like last time. Can I bear this sweet pain? Today, Hayato suddenly realized a big problem. Shiragiku's birthday had passed without anyone noticing. Akane said it was okay to celebrate her birthday 3 weeks late, as it could still be a surprise, and better late than never. So Hayato asked Akane to help him pick a gift. Since Shiragiku often taught Akane cooking, Hayato thought a kitchen-related present would be perfect, and asked Akane for advice. At the shopping district, they first picked out a kitchen knife, which nearly made Akane swear. She finally suggested a cute apron, as the one Shiragiku was wearing was frayed. After finally choosing the gift, Hayato treated Akane to fast food as a thank you. He was short on money after a trip had damaged a hotel wall. However, Hayato wondered why Shiragiku hadn't just told him about her birthday. Akane was speechless, explaining that telling someone you like that today is your birthday could feel embarrassing. She probably hoped he would remember. Later at the mall, what was supposed to be a simple shopping trip turned into a date. Hayato then realized it was December, and, coincidentally, Akane's birthday. He apologized on the spot, finally understanding the hints Akane had been dropping all day. He thought of buying her a gift, but Akane said she was already satisfied just to be on a date with him. However, Hayato wanted to do more, so Akane asked him to promise one thing. If their cafe could be successfully managed, she wanted to marry him. This was practically a proposal. When they got back, they held a birthday party for both Akane and Shiragiku. Hayato kept apologizing for being so busy lately and forgetting important things. Shiragiku said not to worry about it, but her tone sounded almost sarcastic. Hayato didn't dare to breathe a word, especially as Akane fanned the flames by saying Hayato could fulfill her wish as an apology, which was to marry her. The others were stunned. Shiragiku immediately said she wanted the same, and even Ami, whose birthday hadn't been forgotten, joined in the excitement. When Hayato heard Akane's words, he didn't think she was joking because she looked so serious. He had no idea how to respond. Christmas was approaching again, and Uka's staff had switched to Santa suits. Akane still pressed Hayato for an answer. That's when Uka realized Akane was serious yesterday. Suddenly, 2 men in suits burst into the store. One of them grabbed Akane and ran, while the other sprayed something at Hayato, knocking him out and carrying him away. When Uka came to, she shouted that Akane and Hayato had been kidnapped. When Hayato woke up, he found himself in a luxurious old mansion. Akane, dressed in a kimono, told him this was her home. Then Akane's grandmother, a very stern and serious old lady, walked in. She was the same woman who had worked at Hayato's grandfather's cafe. Unlike the friendly ones before, she was displeased with Hayato for leading her granddaughter on. It turned out Akane's grandmother had called to wish her a happy birthday, and Akane had mentioned she found someone she wanted to marry. The grandmother had asked Akane to bring him home, but after being refused, she had to bring Hayato in this way. She directly asked Hayato if he was willing, and he gave a non-committal answer. The grandmother understood immediately because she knew there were 4 other attractive young waitresses in the store. It seemed Hayato wanted to evaluate all 5 before making a decision, which he denied. The grandmother then drew a long sword and thrust it at Hayato, questioning him on what he would do if he had to choose between saving himself or Akane. Hayato's perfect response was, "I will do my best to prevent such a situation." This reminded the grandmother of Hayato's grandmother and the wonderful times they had back then. Hayato's grandmother was the last to join the cafe, received warmly by everyone, especially after they tasted her cooking. The following day, she changed into the uniform, and the manager took a group photo of the staff, the same photo Hayato and the others had found. On the way back, Akane apologized to Hayato. Hayato told her that Akane is Akane, and her family is her family. If he were to date her, he wouldn't care what her family was like. However, marriage would be a different matter since it involves 2 families. Akane is an only child, and Hayato is the eldest son. Whether Akane would marry into Hayato's family, or Hayato would marry into hers, one family's legacy would end with their generation. Akane immediately chose the former. Hayato urged her not to be hasty and to consider her mother and mother-in-law. Moreover, him marrying into her family wasn't out of the question. Perhaps one day he might love her enough to willingly accept this, but not yet. Akane then clung tightly to Hayato's arm, asking him to be prepared. That evening, Hayato looked at the group photo alone. He had now met the mothers of 3 girls, and each was very similar to their respective mothers-in-law. It seemed this was fate. Reho unexpectedly got another chance to be an actress. When her store was bustling due to her popularity, a director interviewed her. Recently, the director found a perfect role for Reho in a hit detective show. Reho hesitated about trying out. Chiyoda encouraged her not to miss this opportunity, saying if she shone on TV, Hayato would surely like her more. With a single sentence, Chiyoda convinced Reho to decide. Surprisingly, the perfect role was to play herself, and even more, her deceased self. After the performance, the director praised her for playing a corpse so well, calling her a genius child star. Now, Reho wished she could kill the director. In the cafe, Hayato and others were worried about Reho's filming. Then, a strange man wearing a hat and coat entered. Uka found him suspicious, and Ami directly called him a pervert, suspecting he wore nothing below the waist. Their words triggered painful memories for Uka. Eventually, the man called Uka over, wanting to show her something. Thinking he was an exhibitionist, Ami quickly subdued him. When Reho returned from filming and saw the man on the ground with a photo in his hand, she froze. The man was her father. Uka and Ami regretted their actions, but luckily, the father didn't mind. He had come to see his daughter but waited for hours without seeing her and tried to ask a waiter. Reho's father was surprised to learn she worked there. They had visited this place when Reho was a child, and her grandmother was still alive. The photo he held was taken that day. Ami interrupted, questioning why he suddenly disappeared. They knew he left silently when Reho was young, just as her fame as a child star was rising. Her father felt his wife had changed, driven by her failed dreams of entering showbiz, and started pushing Reho into it. Disagreements over Reho's upbringing led to constant arguments and eventually a divorce, with her father agreeing not to see Reho until she turned 20. The father knew these were just excuses. He had neglected his daughter for years. Knowing he still cared for her was enough for Reho, but Ami and Uka disagreed, questioning why he didn't visit right when Reho turned 20. He explained that seeing Reho less frequently on TV, he thought she was enjoying a normal life and might have a new family, making his appearance unnecessary. His decision to see her was spurred by a clip on TV, learning she had left home and was working part-time at the cafe. He confronted his ex-wife, discovering she was living a life of neglect, unaware of her daughter's whereabouts. After Reho grew up, her fame diminished. She had to struggle on her own to secure roles, all of which were minor. Yet, her mother accused her of disgracing herself and hurled abuse at her. It was during this time that Reho stumbled upon the cafe and met Hayato's grandmother. After hearing her story, the grandmother took her in and told Reho that she could live for herself. However, upon hearing this, Reho's mother impatiently told her to leave and even expressed regret for having Reho. Since then, Reho never returned home. Reho's father, however, wished she would visit her mother, who was diagnosed with cancer and had only 3 months to live. Upon learning this, Reho showed no sadness and enthusiastically presented the drama she was in. It was only when Shiragiku asked how she planned to handle her mother's situation that Reho truly did not want to return. Alone in her room at night, Reho's thoughts alternated between her father's words and her mother's past accusations. At that moment, Ami entered wearing a gorilla mask and relayed something Hayato once told her. He deeply regretted not seeing his grandmother before she passed away. This encouraged Ami to decide to visit her own grandmother. After sharing this, Ami left. Eventually, Reho resolved to see her mother. Hayato and others encouraged and comforted her, pushing him to accompany her. At the hospital, Reho asked Hayato to wait outside and entered alone. Once inside, she mocked and scorned her mother, saying she deserved her fate, and if she wanted to die, she should just die. Her father was shocked, as this was still her mother. Reho countered that she did not recall this woman ever doing anything motherly, but only used her daughter to satisfy her own need for approval while constantly drinking and complaining. Reho kept speaking her mind, pushing her father away when he tried to intervene. She told her mother to hope for complete despair in her last 3 months, then die like a dog. Her father slapped her at this, but her mother remained unfazed, only noting Reho seemed a bit grown up, but found the final part unacceptable, as it was too outdated for the era. Ignoring her, Reho left with a parting shot that her grandmother would have praised her, and walked out. Hayato heard everything, and like before, felt her performance was forced at the end. In the hospital, Mom also shared a past event with her ex-husband. 25 years ago, she had a cameo in a movie. It was her first time seeing a real actor, and she was completely captivated by the performance. That was also when she tasted despair and decided to quit acting. The actor was the greatest actress of the Showa era, and also his mother, Reho's grandmother. Mom had completely forgotten that before Reho was her daughter, she was first that person's granddaughter. At that time, Rio's father received a video from Hayato, showing Reho improvising during yesterday's filming. She said she wanted her mother to personally express her gratitude for having her. Hearing this, Rio's mom finally agreed to accept treatment, wishing to live longer to see whether her child would turn into a frog or an eagle. On the way back, Reho also confessed her true feelings to Hayato. Actually, hearing her mom praise her made her really happy. Hayato also knew about Reho's grandmother. He had felt the name was familiar, looked it up, and discovered she was a remarkable actress. He asked Reho if she wanted to return to the acting world, mentioning that she would likely receive another job offer soon. Reho didn't refuse and invited Hayato to share his various experiences to help her play a variety of roles, especially in romance. Then she threw herself into Hayato's arms. Christmas is fast approaching. Hayato is planning a Christmas party, unaware that his maids are up to mischief again. Takasaki is sternly advising Reho that she should invite Hayato out for Christmas and engage in romantic activities at a hotel, rather than organizing a family-style Christmas party. Meanwhile, Akane has already proposed directly to Hayato, but Reho thinks Akane is just joking. Uka comments softly, "She's serious." Akane's teammate Biryu, who is well-versed in light novel cliches, is worried about Akane's actions resembling those of a defeated heroine. Thinking about Akane possibly becoming one, Biryu can't help but feel sad. Shiragiku and Reho are not hopeful either. Among the girls at their cafe, Uka is the one to watch out for, as she might make a surprise move. However, Ami could also be a dark horse. In the kitchen, Shiragiku and Momi are discussing cooking techniques while Ami and Tina, the troublemakers, are kicked out. Momi then asks Shiragiku if she plans to take over the family business after graduating from university. Unexpectedly, Shiragiku has no such plans, nor does she intend to open her own store, as she only wants to marry Hayato and help run the cafe. Momi's comment strikes a chord, reminding Shiragiku that Akane and Reho have already made their moves while she has done nothing. With Christmas being a perfect occasion, they decide to make it a battleground to win over Hayato, who is oblivious to all this. On the night of the party, everyone gathers, with Chiyoda as the host and Momi preparing a lavish meal. Shiragiku, Reho, and Akane, each with their own schemes, are present. Shiragiku secures the best spot next to Hayato, while Reho and Akane temporarily team up to take down Shiragiku. When Reho offers her a drink, Shiragiku refuses, claiming she falls asleep easily after drinking. Misinterpreting her words as a hint that she shouldn't sleep tonight, Reho lies that it's just champagne-flavored soda. Just as Shiragiku is about to drink it, a cat jumps up and spills the drink. Failing that plan, Reho turns her attention to Akane, telling her the place used to be full of graves, which scares Akane into sitting right next to Hayato, inadvertently countering Reho's move. Soon, it's time for the gift exchange. Hayato ends up with Takasaki's gift, which fills him with a bad feeling. Upon opening it, he finds something indescribable that even moves on its own. Frightened, Hayato quickly returns it to Takasaki, who passes it to Uka, causing her to faint. Hayato goes to get water for her, and upon returning, he accidentally walks in on the girls changing, no doubt a mishap caused by Ami and Tina. After the party ended, it started to snow outside. Hayato, the manager, and Shiragiku, who was responsible for washing dishes, were the last to leave. Shiragiku called out to Hayato and then kissed him directly. After the kiss, she said nothing and just walked away. She thought Hayato would definitely question her the next day, but he showed no reaction at all, as if nothing had happened. Shiragiku was very conflicted, and finally approached Hayato while he was fishing to ask him what he thought about the incident 2 days ago. Hayato had no particular thoughts since such incidents happened often. Every time Shiragiku got drunk, she would do the same, so he thought this time was no different. However, he did not expect Shiragiku to remember this time. Shiragiku was stunned after hearing this because she had no idea what she was like when drunk. Just then, Ami ran over, and Hayato asked her to show Shiragiku the videos from before. These videos were top secrets of their shop, but it seemed like the right time to reveal them. Watching those embarrassing scenes, Shiragiku couldn't believe it was her. She realized how early her image had collapsed, and most importantly, how much trouble she had caused Hayato. However, Hayato expressed that he didn't mind at all, and appreciated all that Shiragiku had done for him. Shiragiku then asked if Hayato disliked being kissed by her. How could Hayato dislike it? He was just a bit shy. Besides, it was not only Shiragiku's first sober kiss but also Hayato's first kiss. This boosted Shiragiku's confidence, and she even told Akane and Reho about it. They were initially indifferent, but when they heard it was a sober kiss, the situation changed dramatically. They called everyone together to start a trial, adjudicating the case of Shiragiku stealing Hayato's lips. Takasaki served as the chief judge, with Ami and Tina as associate judges, and Akane and Reho as the victims. Their supporters acted as prosecutors. Poor Shiragiku was speechless. Only Momi was willing to defend her. Uka was an observer. The trial began, and after the prosecutors presented the case, they advocated for a verdict of theft. Shiragiku remained speechless, and Momi had to speak up for her, arguing that Hayato belonged to no one and questioning why Shiragiku couldn't kiss him. She kissed him purely out of genuine feelings. Unexpectedly, Biryu presented a mushroom, claiming it proved the defendant did not act out of pure feelings. At first glance, it was just an ordinary king oyster mushroom, but it was actually the same size as Hayato. At this point, the trial completely derailed. They even brought up Shiragiku's drunken antics during last month's hot spring trip. Could that also be called pure feelings? Momi objected, pointing out that Akane and Reho had also been fixated on Hayato's king oyster mushroom. To counter this, they dragged Uka into it since she had the clearest view. The scene turned chaotic. Hayato could no longer stand it and declared he would fight for his human rights. Takasaki silenced him, asserting that men have no rights and should be quiet. By now, Akane and Reho no longer wanted to continue. If they did, they too would be guilty. Reluctantly, Takasaki had to declare the defendant innocent, but as a judge, she could not overlook injustice. Therefore, the remaining four also had to kiss Hayato. Because Shiragiku kissed Hayato on a whim, for fairness, the other four also had to kiss him. Shiragiku had no grounds to object. Surprisingly, Uka was reluctant, while Akane was eager, walking straight up to Hayato. Biryu couldn't stop her. It was like a scene from a romantic drama. Akane held Hayato's face and kissed him without hesitation, and the kiss lasted a long time. Ryo was not pleased, but the more they kissed, the more spirited they became, even deliberately using tongues, making Takasaki want to join them. Eventually, Reho forcefully separated them, and after kissing, Akane ran off. Chiyoda urged Reho to hurry and kiss too, since they were already behind Shiragiku, and now overtaken by Akane. At this point, Hayato had to resign himself. A kiss from one or two, it was all the same, telling Reho to just get it over with. His indifferent attitude, however, angered Reho, making her unwilling to kiss. Then, she took Hayato to school, dressed as high school students. Reho wanted to experience the thrill of being a high school couple, asking Hayato to pin her against a wall, acting as if she was reluctant. At that moment, Hayato grabbed her arm to kiss her, but found it too troublesome. So, Ryo took him to a shrine, thinking of kissing while overlooking the town, but Hayato reminded her that it could anger the gods. Reho quickly dismissed the idea, suggesting they go to a park instead. She sat down, and Hayato was to bend over from behind the bench, but he claimed he wasn't that flexible. By evening, they hadn't agreed on how to kiss, but sitting together under the beautiful stars was also enjoyable. Then Hayato said he was hungry and wanted grilled fish, breaking the romantic atmosphere. Reho was speechless, telling him to do something manly, declaring she wouldn't go home until she got a perfect kiss. Hayato finally understood, pushing Reho to the ground, knowing she just wanted him to take the initiative. He grabbed her resisting hand, aiming to kiss her, but she slapped him, remembering he had kissed Akane that day. She didn't want to be kissed so soon after, telling Hayato to try another day when she least expects it. Hayato found women troublesome, but agreed nonetheless. Meanwhile, Akane kept reminiscing about today's kiss, and the next day, Reho prepared herself to be kissed, but the eerie atmosphere scared Hayato from approaching. Just then, Ami came, and Hayato asked her to tap Riho's head with a tray. Ami, foolishly, used too much force, but Reho blocked it, thinking it was Hayato coming to kiss her. Seeing it was Ami, who then realized Riho's strength, knelt and called her master. The day passed without a kiss, and that night, Reho received a call from her father, sharing good news. Her mother's treatment was more effective than expected. The doctors thought she might really make it. Her mother's will to live had strengthened, especially after watching Reho on a TV drama. Reho was secretly delighted, yet still acted haughty. While reminiscing about his happy childhood with his parents, Hayato suddenly turned Riho's chin and kissed her, then said, "I'm really happy for you." This surprise nearly caused Riho's heart to stop, so much so that she couldn't dodge Ami's sneak attack later that day. That night, Hayato had a nightmare. Akane, Reho, and Shiragiku climbed into his bed naked and demanded he choose one of them. Frightened, Hayato woke up to find a fat cat on him. He blamed the trio for forcing him to kiss them, which led to such a weird dream. The next day, they needed to clean the store. Akane was lazy and didn't want to work. Hayato tried to scold her, but couldn't take his eyes off her lips. He ended up taking the broom himself. Then his gaze was captured by Shiragiku's chest, followed by Reho, who was trying to seduce him. To stay focused, Hayato took over all the chores. Unexpectedly, he found lace underwear in the washing machine, just as Uka and the others walked in, mistakenly thinking he was snooping through their private clothes. Reho and the others didn't mind and teasingly asked Hayato whom he liked. Overwhelmed, Hayato ran out, declaring he would clean the cafe alone as punishment for touching the underwear. He worked until evening and then went straight to his room, took off his pants, and fell asleep. He dreamed again of the three women whispering at his faucet, calling it a wild sushi roll and saying they might as well get their underwear dirty since Hayato wanted to wash it. After several nights of such dreams, Hayato was exhausted. Ami walked in on one such occasion and mistakenly thought his swollen faucet needed medical attention. She applied ointment, thinking it was a bug bite. Ami didn't understand much, but the other three knew more and insisted on treating him, only to be chased out by Hayato. Soon it was almost New Year's, and Chiyoda's restaurant was getting busier, leaving no time to keep track of the ongoing disputes next door. Meanwhile, Shiragiku made handmade buckwheat noodles for everyone except Hayato, who received supermarket-bought frozen udon. Everyone thought Shiragiku was still angry with Hayato, not realizing this was her way of showing care. Shiragiku's grandmother used to make buckwheat noodles for her grandson because Hayato mentioned wanting a supermarket udon and tempura combo. Now that her grandmother was gone, Shiragiku took on this role for someone she cared about. Since their kiss, Shiragiku had become more open, often making heartfelt confessions. Uka, not wanting to hear their bickering, reminded everyone to eat. Seeing the girls happily eating, Hayato felt content. He remembered his grandmother once prayed to the gods hoping Hayato would never feel lonely. It seems the gods heard her prayers. Uka made new clothes for everyone. They all went to the New Year's shrine visit together, and happened to meet acquaintances who were curious about which girl Hayato would end up with. However, Hayato didn't wish for romance, but prayed for business prosperity instead. After the visit, Uka asked everyone what they prayed for. Ami prayed for her grandmother's health, Shiragiku for the cafe's success, Reho for her mother, and Akane did similarly. Uka wished for the health and collaboration of the 5 cafe staff members, but accidentally excluded Hayato. Everyone had their plans for the new year. Only Shiragiku expressed a desire to continue working at the cafe as Hayato's wife, while Uka mentioned wanting to try various things and walked at the back, as if ready to go their separate ways.